Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel for the best college football analysis, news, discussion, and debate. I am Alex Galbraith. You've probably seen me on Mark Rogers TV a couple times before, helping out with some live streams or some instant analysis during the college football season. I've now joined Mark Rogers TV, so you might see me a little bit more doing videos like this, doing some more live streams like I did earlier this month, and definitely helping out a lot behind the scenes to continue to make Mark Rogers TV even better for you guys, the hardcore fans. So you can also check me out on the Gridiron Expert, my YouTube channel, where I'm doing my Power 5 predictions right now. We've already completed the SEC and the ACC and are working through the Big Ten. We're doing game-by-game predictions for every Power 5 team, and then we'll do conference recaps for every group of 5 teams. So some good analysis and discussion over there. But I'm very glad to be on board with Mark Rogers TV. I'm glad that he brought me along, and we're going to have a great time and continue to bring you some great college football discussion and debate. And so as you know, Media Day started this week. The SEC, the Big 12, and the ACC kicked everything off this week, and Mark has a lot of great stuff lined up for you guys over the course of this week. Plenty of guests going to be on talking about their favorite teams and giving you some great analysis on what goes on during the media days this week, and this will continue on for a couple of weeks. But it got me to start thinking when we're talking about media days about these first-year head coaches. We're going to see some new head coaches step up to the podium for the first time in these respective conferences with their respective teams, and it got me to start thinking which first-year head coach is under the most pressure going into the 2018 season. So not which first-year head coach is going to have the most success, but which one is under the most pressure to deliver results in the 2018 season. So this is solely based on Power 5. We're not going to dive too much into the group of 5, but the new head coaches in the Power 5 are Kevin Sumlin at Arizona, moving on from Texas A&M, Herm Edwards at Arizona State, Chad Morris at Arkansas, Dan Mullen at Florida, Willie Taggart, Florida State, Matt Luke at Ole Miss, and yes, he was the interim head coach last year, but they removed that interim tag, so he made his list. Joe Moorhead at Mississippi State, coming over from offensive coordinator at Penn State, Scott Frost at Nebraska, Mario Cristobal at Oregon, Jonathan Smith at Oregon State, Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee, Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M, and Chip Kelly at UCLA. So last year's offseason was very wild, one of the craziest coaching carousels we had seen in recent memory. Some big-time names bouncing around and across the nation in college football. Chip Kelly making the return back to the college ranks. You see Kevin Sumlin go to Arizona after getting fired from Texas A&M. You've got Dan Mullen leaving Mississippi State to Florida. Willie Taggart leaving Oregon after just 1 year and going to Florida State. So it was a wild coaching carousel. And I'm looking at all these coaches, and I had a couple pop into mind. I was like, they really need to do well in 2018 just to get the trust of the fan base. And really, there's one major factor that goes into this discussion, one major factor that kind of goes into determining which coach is under the most pressure, because some teams lose their head coach because they left to take another job, such as Willie Taggart leaving Oregon to go take the Florida State job. Oregon wasn't a bad team last year. They went 7-5 on the regular season and went 5 games without their star quarterback in Justin Herbert, as he had an injury. So Willie Taggart left to take the Florida State job. Oregon didn't get rid of him. He just left for a good opportunity at Florida State. Same with Dan Mullen. He left Mississippi State to go take the Florida job, where he was offensive coordinator for 3 years, 2005 to 2008. Or sometimes you have a team that fires their head coach because they're not producing the results. They're not meeting the expectations that this football team wants. And I think that's probably the better position to be in, for a new head coach to come in with a new team that has struggled in recent years, and they're trying to turn around that team. Because if you come into a team that had a solid year the year before, or had great success over the couple years, and you're trying to reproduce that success, if you don't reach that, especially in year one, the fan bases are quick to turn on you. We live in an age now where a lot of fan bases want immediate results. They immediately want to get to a bowl game. They immediately want to start competing for a conference championship, or even at the national level, the college football playoff. And that sometimes just isn't realistic, but we, the fans, we have that in our mind. We want to see our teams do well, and after years and years of struggle or years and years of success, we either want to continue that success or end those struggles. So, the way I look at it is, if you have a bad team, take Arkansas, for example, from last year when going 4-8, Brett Bielema was last year. Chad Morris is coming in. I don't think expectations are too high for Chad Morris going into the season. He inherits a team that really struggled last year, inherits solid starters this year, but Arkansas is certainly not going to be a team that competes in the SEC West. They're not going to be challenging Alabama or Auburn or even LSU for that number 1 spot in that division. So he kind of inherits a good position here, where if he does well, getting to 6 wins or 7 wins, it's going to be a huge success and a sign of good things to come. Where if you take a team that has had a solid year the year before, has a lot of talent, say Joe Moorhead at Mississippi State, returning 17 starters. You got Nick Fitzgerald at quarterback. You got Montez Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons along that defensive line. He's got a solid Mississippi State team that he really can't afford to slip up here. This is a Mississippi State team that I think could compete with Auburn for second in the West. At least I think they're going to be one of the top 3 teams in the SEC West this season. So it would be very disappointing for Joe Moorhead to come in and only get to maybe 7 or even 8 wins. I mean, I have them at 9-3 on the year. So those are kind of some factors that you have to look at with these new head coaches going in to the 2018 season and at any point really when you have a new head coach. So you can look at some of these coaches that I just listed, and you can talk about first-year successes among head coaches. You can go back over the course of history and look at a coach that comes in and has a great first year there. So, I mean, for example, you have Kevin Sumlin in 2012. He comes over from Houston to take over the Texas A&M job. Their first year in the SEC, he leads the Aggies to an 11-2 record, beat number 1 Alabama on the road, I should say, finished with a win over Oklahoma in the Cotton Bowl, and finished number 5 in the nation, and had Johnny Manziel at quarterback, who won the Heisman that year. So could he repeat that success this year? I don't think Kevin Sumlin's under that much pressure at Arizona, but he does return a solid team. Khalil Tate, very solid dual-threat quarterback, somewhat similar to Johnny Manziel, so he has a lot of talent there. 7 offensive returning starters and 9 on defense. So this is an Arizona team that could potentially compete in the Pac-12 South. Maybe he can repeat that success they had in year 1 at Texas A&M. Gus Malzahn at Auburn in 2013. You know, he was the offensive coordinator for Auburn when they won the national championship over Oregon. He goes 12-2 in his first year as head coach of the Tigers, wins the SEC championship, and just barely lost to Florida State in the national championship. So another solid year there. Even you can go into the group of 5 and talk about Chris Peterson, heck of a head coach, now at Washington. At Boise State in 2006, his first year, they went undefeated, and that was, of course, the crazy Fiesta Bowl win over Oklahoma, the Statue of Liberty play, the hook and ladder. We all know about that game, and he went 13-0 in his first year with the Broncos. You can go even farther back. I know this was a little bit before my time, but I've done a little bit of research. You can do Larry Coker, 2001 at Miami. That Miami team in 2001 was stacked. And so that kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the talent that this new head coaches inherit. The Hurricanes that year went 12-0, won the national championship over Nebraska, and that was just in his first year as head coach. And even you can go farther back than that. Earl Bruce in 1979 for Ohio State, 11-1, finished number 4 in the nation. And they were actually number 1, but lost to USC by 1 point in the Rose Bowl. So still, in his first year, 1 loss to a solid USC team, finished number 4 in the nation. So these are some of the first-year successes. I mean, plenty more out there, of course, that I didn't put on this list. But those are you're looking at these head coaches there with solid coaches: Jimbo Fisher, Chip Kelly, Kevin Sumlin, Dan Mullen. You've got these guys here that maybe could work up some magic and have a solid year in just year 1 at their respective school, and that would be extremely impressive. I will tell you that I think the one coach that's under the least amount of pressure, that really I think doesn't have a lot of high expectations, Jonathan Smith at Oregon State. I mean, Oregon State hasn't had a lot of success in recent years. They haven't been to a bowl game, I believe, since it was 2013, and they have only had 12 wins since that bowl appearance in 2013. So they're averaging about 3 wins a year since that bowl berth. 2014, 15, 16, and 17 just combined 12 wins. Last year going 1-11. So he was a star quarterback at Oregon State. A good hire. He might get there in time. But this isn't an Oregon State team that all of a sudden is going to jump from 1-11 to 7 or 8 wins. They have some talent there for sure. But I think he's under the least amount of pressure because Oregon State has been used to having the disappointing seasons. They have made the rankings, had some solid players, but haven't been to a bowl game since 2013. They know that they're probably not going to make one this year. They thought they were going to make one last year, weren't able to make one. So this year, I don't think they have a lot of high expectations. I think he inherits a solid position where he knows if he can just improve, get to 2 wins even, 3, 4, anywhere around there, just to show that he's improved his Beavers team a little bit, it's going to be a sign of good things to come. So I think he inherited a solid spot there knowing that, hey, we don't have high expectations right now at Oregon State. So, if he has another solid, horrible year like the Beavers have had in recent memory, he might be okay. But you're looking down the road here. Those coaches that I mentioned, their respective teams, a handful of them have winning records or were at 500. But you can even look at Matt Luke. Matt Luke at Ole Miss, he got them to a 6-6 record last year. Extremely impressive. I didn't see them get to that mark, but couldn't go to a bowl game because of all their sanctions. Can't go to a bowl game this year because of their sanctions. So he could go undefeated, and they still can't do anything. So I don't think he's under a lot of pressure either. If he can just get them back to 6-6, maybe improve on that 7, 8 wins. Even if he just goes 5-7, which is where I have them on the year, it's not going to be a bad year because they can't get to a bowl game. So what are the expectations there really for Ole Miss this year until they can start competing again for a conference championship, for a bowl berth? So I don't think there's a lot of pressure there. I do think Joe Moorhead is under some pressure. I think, like I said, that solid Mississippi State team, that with all those returning starters there, they did lose Dan Mullen. That's a big loss for them. But Joe Moorhead's an offensive guru. He's a very offensive-minded coach, did great things at Penn State. I expect that to continue over for the Bulldogs, but if he doesn't meet expectations, getting them to, I think, at least 8 wins, that's going to be a pretty disappointing year for the Bulldogs there, but not one where I think, the fans are going to backlash him too hard. So you look at that. Mario Cristobal, Oregon. Oregon did a great job keeping their coaching staff intact. Willie Taggart leaves to take the Florida State job. They promote Mario Cristobal up. And, they have a solid team with Justin Herbert at quarterback and very, very solid defense. Jim Leavitt at defensive coordinator. Tons of NFL talent on that side of the ball. The key for Oregon is going to be to stay healthy. So Oregon could compete in the Pac-12 North. Absolutely. They have to go up against Washington and Stanford, of course, the two heavy favorites, I think. But, this is another Oregon team that I think if he can get them to 8 or 9 wins, it's a solid year. Even if he doesn't, we saw how quickly they turned on Mark Helfrich after one really, really bad year, 2 years removed from a national championship appearance. So he can't afford to do too bad, but I think he's going to be okay. Same with Chip Kelly and Jimbo Fisher. I think A&M should be happy if Fisher can come in with the team he has this year, gets them to 8 wins. They had 3 straight 8-5 years before going 7-6 last year and then fired Kevin Sumlin. So if they can get, Jimbo Fisher to get in there, 7 or 8 wins once again, I think he's going to slowly progress his Aggies team to make them national contenders. And then Chip Kelly as well, making the return to the college ranks. I don't think he's under a lot of pressure either. The Bruins face the toughest schedule in the nation, in my opinion. Mark's going to have that coming out here soon. He's going to rank all of the FBS schedules, so make sure you're on the lookout for that. But when you make the return from the college ranks, haven't coached in a while at this level, he returns. He doesn't have a whole lot of returning starters. He loses that star quarterback in Josh Rosen. So with some inexperience and a tough schedule, I think it would be understandable if Chip Kelly even misses out on a bowl game this year. So that wouldn't be too surprising. But my coach that I have with the most amount of pressure going into 2018, the one that really needs to overperform rather than underperform, is Dan Mullen at Florida. And I'll tell you why. We saw in the Jim McElwain era, when he started off in 2015, he got the Gators to back-to-back SEC championship games. Won the SEC East in back-to-back years. Went 10-4 in 2015 and 9-4 in 2016. So he was 19-8 in 2 years with Florida, which is a solid year. In back-to-back SEC championship appearances, they got blown out against Michigan in their bowl game in 2015. Won their bowl game in blowout fashion over Iowa in 2016. So he wasn't doing a horrible job with the Gators, but could never really get that offense clicking. They really had a lot of struggles on offense. Defense was usually pretty good. Last year, not a great start for the Gators. They lost to Michigan that season opener, lost to LSU by 1 point, thanks to a missed PAT. Ended up going 4-7 last year, and they fired McElwain. So I think Florida has made it very clear that they're not going to settle for mediocrity. They're not going to settle for 6 wins, 7 wins. They need to be competing in the SEC East just about every year, much like they did for the course of their entire history. Urban Meyer had them at that level. McElwain had it there for a little bit. But this is a Florida team that really needs to compete in the East against Georgia, who I think is absolutely the heavy favorite in the East this year. I don't see anyone really overtaking Georgia in the East this year besides maybe South Carolina. But I think Georgia is certainly the clear favorite in the East and certainly the most dominant team there for this season. But Dan Mullen was there as offensive coordinator from 2005 to 2008. He knows what was expected of him. He knows the culture for this Florida Gators team. He knows the history and what they expect. And like I said, I think Florida made that very, very clear by firing McElwain after just one horrible year at 4-7. Yes, there were plenty of factors contributing to that, namely the struggles on offense. But I was a little taken aback, too. They got rid of him that quickly. So I think, Dan Mullen has to get this Florida team to at least 8 wins in his first year there. He can do it. Florida returns 19 starters, 10 on offense, 9 on defense, and he's an offensive mastermind. He look what he did at Mississippi State over his career there. His first year there, he went 5-7. Obviously, that's not going to cut it here at Florida, and I don't think that's what's going to happen here at Florida in Dan Mullen's first year. But they have a quarterback situation, so that's going to be the key for Florida. Can they get that quarterback situation fixed up? It's going to be Felipe Franks. It's going to be Emory Jones. But regardless of that, they have Tyree Cleveland at wide receiver. They return 4 offensive linemen. They got Jordan Scarlett at running back. Defense, they're going to have C.C. Jefferson. They're going to have David Reese, C.J. Henderson, and Jawan Taylor. So this is a solid Florida team that really, I think, could surprise some people in the SEC East. And there certainly are some questions on both sides of the ball. I'm not saying that they're going to all of a sudden jump in Dan Mullen's first year and overtake Georgia in the SEC East. I'm not saying that at all. But I think he could surprise some people, and we've seen what he's been able to do at Mississippi State. I think he's going to take that over to Florida, certainly do that there, but he's certainly under the most pressure because 6 wins, even 7 wins, I think would be a pretty disappointing year for his first year with the Gators. I don't think that would be one that Gator fans are going to get excited about. Certainly going to be excited to get back to a bowl game, without a doubt. But I think 8 wins or more is what Mullen needs to get to win this fan base back over. They're excited about it. No, I mean, that was the perfect hire for Florida this year. Don't get me wrong. They're pumped. It's a great hire for Florida. By no means, it's very exciting for the Gators at this time of year. I'm very excited to see how they do this season. And I think, when bringing in a guy that knows the culture at Florida, it was another solid hire. And obviously, we saw what he did as offensive coordinator from 05 to 08. Great things with Florida. And he's going to get, I think, a little more talent, more opportunities on the recruiting trail at Florida than he did at Mississippi State. So you look at what he did at Mississippi State and take what he did there with maybe less talent, more struggles, and go to a bigger school like Florida. It's a solid hire and really a recipe for success, I think, in the future. But Dan Mullen, without a doubt, I think the coach under the most pressure going in to 2018 needs to get, I think, to at least 8 wins to have Florida fans calm, knowing that, hey, we're on the right track, and maybe in 2019 could challenge Georgia for the number 1 spot in the SEC East. I don't think they're going to do that this year. I actually have the Gators going 9-3. I think this is a solid team, one that people aren't getting a lot of attention because they are referencing and they are using the facts from last year to think they know what's going to happen to this Florida team this year. They went 4-7 last year, have a horrible offense, so they're going to do horrible, even though they have Dan Mullen. Certainly not the case. He's a heck of a head coach. He returns a lot of starters, has a favorable schedule, and I really do think this Florida team could surprise some people, but I think Dan Mullen knows himself, too, that Florida has made it clear what our expectations are and what you need to do to meet them, and if you don't do that quick, you're going to be in some trouble, much like we saw with Jim McElwain. So that's who we've got as our least pressured coach going into 2018, Jonathan Smith at Oregon State, Dan Mullen under the most pressure in 2018 at Florida. So as always, we all know Media Day is going on this week and into next week as well, so please continue to come back here to Mark Rogers TV for excellent Media Day coverage, for more discussion, and I'd love to hear you guys' comments and see what you guys think. Who is under the most pressure? What first-year head coach is under the most pressure going into 2018? Is it going to be Dan Mullen? Do you agree with me? If not, I'd love to hear you guys' comments down below, as always, and make sure to keep coming back here for the best college football analysis, discussion, and debate, and more Media Day coverage, some of the best in the nation, right here at Mark Rogers TV.